What does it take to win in today's postseason in college football? We'll address that as well as a lot of other things around the sport that you and I both know and love with every fiber of our being. I said it yesterday. I will say it again. This show, The Hard Count, is one, the People's College Football Show. Two, this show is for people who choose to watch full YouTube reruns of college football games, whether it be a classic game, whether it be a game from last season. However you enjoy your full game rerun is totally up to you, but we just appreciate y'all treating college football like the year-round sport that it is. As I just mentioned, welcome into the Hard Count. It is Wednesday, June 12th, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet, so we're going to make it a great one. We got a lot to jump into. We're going to talk about the postseason, a good amount on this show, what it takes to win, the secret ingredients to ultimately hoist that national championship trophy for your specific team. Also, we had a what-if from one of y'all that, as I read it, man, it hit me in my soul. It touched the very inmost part of my heart. And the what if was, what if losing doesn't matter as much as it used to? I know you just felt it too. It's just a little, it's subtle, but it's a little twinge on the heartstrings. We'll unpack that one together. For Ohio State, it is a now or never kind of vibe to this upcoming season. Not that they, will have a window closed if they don't get it done this season, but around Ryan Day specifically, there's a lot of conversation around, well, what if they don't beat Michigan? What if they don't win the national championship? And all those things. So I felt like it was appropriate for us to get together here and say, what are the best and worst case scenarios for Ohio State? So I guess the worst case is fairly obvious if you lose to Michigan for the fourth year in a row. But the best case scenario, like what if Ryan Day just went out this past offseason, put together a roster that's going to go win a national championship? Think that deserves some discussing. Had a what if from one of y'all as well. What if Alabama and this new offense is just a perfect fit with Jalen Milroe now at quarterback and Kalen DeBoer's system? If you've watched this show for the better part of the last few weeks, you know we have a very strong opinion on that what if, so we'll get to that. The desired win total series takes its trip out to Austin, Texas. Because Texas, man, it's funny. The fan base's reputation nationally. Now, I don't believe the fan base is actually like this or was like this, but the reputation nationally resembles a lot of what folks are saying about Texas A&M right now. Now, Longhorn fans, you just got a little bit frustrated because I put you and the Aggies in the same sentence. It'll make more sense as we move along here. But a lot of folks used to say that Texas fan base was entitled. They were delusional. They would drink the burnt orange Kool-Aid every single offseason, be disappointed every single season. Well, clearly, Texas coming off a college football playoff berth and a conference championship as they move into the SEC. That burnt orange Kool-Aid went down just fine this past offseason. And what are they going to do for an encore? What is a win total that fan base would be content with? Also, to round this show out, like we do our very best to own our misses on this show. Actually, I have been workshopping some stuff for the fall, and I'm pretty certain we're going to have a hits and misses segment that we'll do every single week during the season to say, hey, we were wrong or hey, we were right, and we'll talk about that as it gets here. But who are a few teams that maybe we were just a smooth 52 weeks too early on? Like, I think they're going to be good this season. Last season, we told you they'd be good as well, but we were just jumped the gun by a year. Who hasn't jumped the gun by a year once or twice in their life? We'll give you those teams at the end of the show. We're so glad to have you all a part of this. And I don't say that just because it sounds good to open up the show or because it's something that's polite to do. Like, genuinely, the fact that y'all take time out of your week to just chop it up with us and talk college football in the month of June, no less. Like, that fires me up. That gives me life, and we feel incredibly grateful, fortunate, lucky, and all those to be able to do this and do this with y'all. So let's jump right into it, man. The state of series in college football continues to roll along. We've talked a myriad of topics with a myriad of discussions. I want us to have a discussion today about the state of winning in college football's postseason. Now, if you've been tuned in, you know we already did a segment on the state of college football's playoff and where that's headed. This is not a commentary on the playoff and the structure and what we feel about it expanding. This isn't one of those segments. What I want us to talk about together is how do you win now as the path to a national championship has changed? Because in some respects, the path has gotten a lot wider. Like, anytime you let more teams on that final path, which isn't that now the 12-team playoff, like, yeah, there's going to be more teams in the fight now. At the exact same time, I would argue the path has also gotten a little bit more steep. Like, yeah, you're climbing up a mountain. You know, you got a wide path, but you're still climbing up a mountain. There's still a pretty heavy incline there. So what does it take to win a national championship? What does it take to win in college football's postseason period? The thought I arrived at was the formula to win it all hasn't really changed all that much, but I think the margin for error within that formula and the importance of that formula has been magnified. Because what have you heard so often leading up to the first round of the college football playoff and leading up to national championship games? You hear a lot of talk around, well, hey, Georgia, they're deep. Well, hey, Michigan, we heard this a lot last season. We said this a lot last season. They are as deep as it gets. There's not a tremendous drop-off from ones to twos and then twos to further reserves. Like, they got dudes across the board. They got a lot of dudes on this roster that can play ball for you at a high level. That's always been important. However, now you look at the path to a national championship, like, you're going to be asking some dudes to play 16 games. It's going to be a pretty strong obstacle course to find your way to hoisting a national championship trophy. The reality is, in a 16-game season, you may need to have your twos playing or a specific player that wouldn't be a starter in a pretty high-impact moment. Like, you might need to have your backup quarterback, your backup offensive tackle playing for you in the semifinals of the college football playoff. In that specific instance, when those scenarios arrive, there can't be this drop-off. You got to have those dudes hold their water, hold steady, and be able to deliver for you on the biggest stage. So depth, absolutely crucial. In the same vein, I think versatility across your roster and versatility as well in play style has never been more important. And it used to be where you wouldn't have to adjust your play style too much, but for maybe one conference game a year, and then when you got to the college football playoff and the national championship game, you'd have to be able to adjust a little bit to the opposition. But like in this 12-team playoff, you might need to win a shootout against Ole Miss one week, Lane Kiffin and co., and then you might have to turn around the next week and play a rock fight style game against Michigan. So the way that you build your roster and the way that you're able to scheme it up week in and week out, there's going to be a lot of responsibility now on these coordinators to be able to shapeshift week in and week out, especially in this college football playoff format. Long gone are the days where you can just have one style, one trick pony. That's all you're rolling with. Okay, let's get after it. Like, those days are gone. Those days are gone. You're going to have to be able to match up with different styles of teams in order to make runs in the college football playoff. Now, here's, I think, one of the more interesting points when it comes to where we're headed in this whole discussion. I think quarterback play will be even further accentuated in this new playoff format than it ever has been. And the reason why I arrive at this thought is because look at the way that the college football playoff is starting to mirror more and more the NFL playoff, just in terms of number of games that you play. When was the last time a mid-NFL quarterback won a Super Bowl? It's been a minute. Y'all that were making Trent Dilfer jokes in the background there, hush, it's not kind. I'm a Trent Dilfer stan. Who wins in the NFL playoffs? Brady, Mahomes, dudes that are dudes at their position, dudes that are guys at the quarterback position. That'd be a great quote graphic, dudes that are guys at their position. We roll along, though. I think in these specific instances, in the college football playoff as it expands, you're going to run into more games where you don't have the same advantage from a roster talent level. Like, you're going to have to play teams that are able to match up on the line of scrimmage, that are able to match up on the perimeter. And so what happens when you have kind of that stalemate from a talent level, you got to go to the individual who touches the football every freaking play for you offensively, your quarterback. And so I think it's going to be a quarterback-driven playoff here, especially when we get down to winning time where it's semifinals, quarterfinals. Like, I think that's where it really, really starts to become intriguing, and that's where you'll really see the great quarterbacks, the elite quarterbacks, elevate their team and start to separate. It's also worth noting, too, even if you don't have that roster talent advantage, which you would like to have, and I think more often than not you'll see the teams that win at the highest level have, you can have the quarterback kind of make up for it in some ways. Like, how often do we talk about Cam Newton and that Auburn team, which I understand this is a different era of college football, but, like, he put that team on his back, and drug them to a national championship. Now, were there other good players on that roster? Of course, so I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but I think the same thing can be true in specific instances for certain teams in this playoff. Miami comes to mind. Cam Ward, I promise you, he changes that preseason win total for Miami. Changes it. It's 9.5 right now. Without Cam Ward, what is it, 7.5? And that's not throwing shade at Miami. There's just an understanding now that the quarterback, if you have a quarterback, you have a chance. If you have a quarterback, that might be the answer for you, where maybe you don't have the advantage on other spots across your roster. Now, here's the other thing. Those are kind of the key ingredients to me, I think. Versatility, depth on your roster. You got to have, I think, an elite quarterback. I think the days of being able to win in spite of your quarterback are long behind us in college football. Maturity and culture is going to be very much so exposed in these college football playoffs. They are. And we've seen it a little bit, too. We talked to J.J. McCarthy before last year's national championship game, and he told us, like, yeah, experience as a competitor is your greatest weapon. He was more or less saying, like, that's the reason why we feel good about ourselves walking into this national championship game. But in this new playoff format, I've said it multiple times now, you're going to have to win 3-4 games to go on a run here. The maturity it's going to take and the strong culture it's going to take to not get too high, to not drink your own Kool-Aid, to not read the press clippings, and to be able to just keep the main thing, be businesslike, be robotic in a sense, not be overly emotional, and just handle business every single game. That's asking a lot, especially when you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds. Like, it is. And there's a reason, too, why psychologically we're seeing this play out in other tournament fashions. Like in March Madness, the most talented team may not always win the tournament. It's the team that's able to play their best every single game, every single week, essentially, weekend rather, in that format. And it's the teams that are able to have the composure and competitive excellence to stay even keel, to not let the moment get too big, and to keep the main thing, keep on rolling. That's going to be the same thing in these college football playoffs. We've seen it previously in a smaller sample size in the 4-team playoff. Georgia, experience one twice. Michigan last year, experience one. We're going to see that. I think teams that make a run will be, one, strong culture, but two, I think have a lot of upperclassmen. Now, notice the teams that we're not talking about here. As we explain this more and more, as we walk it further and further down the road, we're not talking about Cinderella teams. We're not. And I hate to be the one to kind of dunk on any other school that maybe is going to sneak in the college football playoff and be a great story that they made the dance. But, like, football has an emphasis on physical ability as it correlates to success more than any other sport out there. Like, there's no three-point shot that's going to equalize things for you here. There's no ace pitcher that's going to just be able to neutralize your lineup. Like, it is a bully sport. We have more big human beings than you, and we are going to impose our will on you for 4 quarters, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. That is college football. And so the fact that we're going to see that played out in a larger sample size is going to, and again, in my opinion, decrease the amount of teams that are able to go on these Cinderella-esque runs, this G5 team to the playoff. And that's not me throwing shade at the G5. I love the G5, all right? G5, I stand with y'all. But when it comes to the college football playoff, we're not going to see these 3-4 game win streaks that end up having a Cinderella-ish kind of story go win the national championship. The reason why we know that, y'all, we saw it a little bit ago. We saw TCU trot out there against Georgia, be vastly overmatched on the line of scrimmage, and that was pretty much all she wrote. That game was over by halftime. You got Kirby Smart's players grabbing chicken wings off the sideline. Like, they were chilling by the third or fourth quarter because they were physically so superior. And so, again, I am not trying to dunk on any other lower level, quote-unquote, teams that will end up in the college football playoff. I'm all for it. I'm all about it. But we're not going to see these 3-4 game Cinderella runs by the lower level, quote-unquote, teams that make a run at this thing. I'm not saying we won't see upsets, but that's just kind of the way that I see this whole thing shaking out in the long run. So that's the state of winning in college football's postseason as we see it right now. But again, postseason is going to change. As we expand that field to 14 teams in a few years, I think that formula, again, will be even further emphasized. The larger the field grows, I think the more important it becomes to have depth, versatility, culture, elite quarterback play, all those things. They feel like givens, but I'm telling you, in that playoff setting where you have a lot of talented teams, that's what I think makes the difference for you. Random college football player of the day. For those of y'all that have been tuned into this show, or for those of y'all that are following on the social channels at JD Pickell, Twitter and Instagram, this is something we started doing right around a week ago, and the reason for that being there is some sick, twisted part of the college football fan's brain that draws enormous amounts of pleasure from just strictly naming random college football players. And I said this story a couple of times already. I'll say it again. Like, I can hang out with a best friend I haven't seen in years, old buddy from high school, and we're chopping it up. We're talking probably for 3-4 hours. I come back home, see my wife. She says, "How's his family? How's his love life? How's his job?" I'm like, I don't even think we got to that, to be honest with you. Well, what'd you do for 3? We talked about random college football players. We went back and forth. It was absolutely electric. It was awesome, and I feel closer to that human being than I ever have before because of naming random college football players. So we're doing this segment more or less every day, every live show at least. Random college football player for today is Rey Maualuga. He was an absolute beast for USC. The linebacker for them, had elite hair, wore number 58, I think in homage to Lofa Tatupu, who was also could be in a future version of random college football player of the day. He was 3-time first team All Pac-10. Now, the Pac-12, now we miss you. Rest in peace to the Pac-12. But before the Pac-12, there was the Pac-10. And Rey Maualuga tore that thing up. He has one of the coolest Sports Illustrated covers. I think it's him, Brian Cushing, and I want to say it's Clay Matthews as well, all on the cover with like their arms folded. They all have sick flow. He was a dude, unanimous All-American, as well as Chuck Bednarik, Defensive Player of the Year in college football in the year 2008. So he was an absolute savage. To me, he embodies, at least defensively, what those USC Pete Carroll teams were like. High energy, violent, flying around. You saw him for a long time on those commercials for college football on ESPN, I believe it was, where the quarterback from UCLA is running to the sideline, and Rey Maualuga essentially just snatches this dude's soul out of his body and, I mean, through every fiber of his being, through his chest. And I do not know how the quarterback got up. It's still, to this day, I think is one of the great mysteries of human science. Dude was a heat-seeking missile. He probably would have been escorted off the field in handcuffs had he done that in today's modern college football, given the targeting rules and the way that we have become a little bit baby lotion soft on things like that. But Rey Maualuga, a legend for us here on this show, and the random college football player of the day. So shouts to Rey Maualuga. Speaking of legends, we have y'all hit us up all the time on the social media platform, and y'all are legends, and y'all got at me on Twitter, and we talked about what ifs. That's still a prompt on my Twitter page, which is essentially what is the biggest what if for you that will shape the 2024 college football season. And The Rock hit me up. Now, this is not Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. In fact, this is even better. I believe it's the Rock from Knoxville, Knox Rock. Very cool username. Wasn't Dwayne. He I think he's probably still mulling over what he wants to reply to that tweet. So he'll probably add in at a future show. But the what if here is, what if losing doesn't matter like it used to? Ooh, that hurts, doesn't it? Doesn't that just kind of make you feel some type of way as a college football fan? I'll say it again. What if losing doesn't matter like it used to in college football? And if you are just watching the show for the first time, welcome. We're glad to have you here. But the reason why this makes us feel some kind of way in our soul is because college football has been built on the idea that one loss can change everything for you. Doesn't matter if it's the first game of the season. Doesn't matter if it's in October. It could be rivalry weekend. If you lose a football game, the entire complexion of your season is changed from that point forward. And so what The Rock is here saying is like, hey, well, what if we lose that? What if we lose a little bit of that magic from the regular season that you talked about yesterday, JD? I think it's fair. I think it's fair for us to be concerned about. I think it's fair for us to have a question about. And the reason why we're so hypersensitive to this thought is like college football, again, is built on the regular season. Let's call a spade a spade. That is what this thing is built on. And so it's a little bit like if the rock band that you always enjoyed growing up, and only you knew about them, and it was sort of this fun thing that you and your best friends all enjoyed together, they get a little bit of, a little bit of recognition nationally, globally, dare I say, starts to get some more traction, and then they sort of change their tune. They sort of change their sound. Big music gets their hands on them, and it goes from this rock band with a really cool sound to playing techno music at arenas. That's great you're playing arenas, but like we enjoyed this band when they were playing dive bars and coffee shops and all that, and they were just playing rock music. So that's kind of the metaphor to me when it comes to how college football is changing. I would say the good news is, as much as we sit here as fans and talk about, oh, well, if they lose a game, it doesn't mean as much as it used to, and this and that, and like, that's a fair discussion to have that we're going to have continually on this show. But at a internal level, if you walk into the locker room in Athens, Georgia, or Columbus, Ohio, or Austin, Texas, or Baton Rouge, Louisiana, like, losing there still means as much as it did before. Because nobody within a locker room, nobody within a building that watches film, that puts on pads for practice or puts on a helmet during game day, like, losing there is never more acceptable just because maybe the margin for error to make the college football playoff changes. It doesn't. Nobody prepares to lose in college football, which sounds like a no-dust statement, but I think the more we talk about it, we're sort of trying to, like, I think, justify that you can lose more games and, like, people are going to be okay with that. And, again, as a fan, it changed the way that we view the game from a postseason perspective. But, like, Ohio State, doesn't matter how many teams let in the playoff. If you lose a football game, that is below their standard. Kirby Smart at Georgia, I promise, same deal. Like, they are not preparing to lose any football games this season. And if you do, they're not okay with that. They're not saying, oh, okay, great. Well, you know what? At 10-2, we're still in the playoff. No. Because that's not what winners do. That's not what elite competitors with a winning mindset do. And so what I think needs to be said is, like, that internal temperature for these teams not going anywhere. So does losing, change in terms of how much it matters for us as college football fans? Sure, but with the actual sport, the actual thing that's happening on the field between the white lines, losing means the exact same amount as it did before, which is that it's unacceptable, inexcusable. Now, going back to what we said, the macro/big picture of this whole thing does change a little bit. And the thing that needs to be talked about here is, like, it used to be if you beat Georgia one time or you beat Alabama with the Nick Saban regime one time, hey, maybe you have a chance to keep them out of the playoff. Maybe you have a chance to keep them out of that conference title game in Atlanta. Maybe. Where now if you beat them one time, they're still making the college football playoff. Like, that's the reality. So you got to beat these teams multiple times to drastically impact their chances of getting into the college football playoff. So while the value of a loss can change from what happens in real time to what it means at the end of the season, I think that late losses, those will impact your team a little bit more, but more so when it comes to seeding. And what I mean by that is, like, you would much rather be the 5 seed than the 9 seed. No duh. Like, the path to a national championship is obviously drastically more easy if you're the 5 seed than if you're the 9 seed on paper. But what needs to be talked about here is, while the value of a loss changes in the sense that you controlling your own destiny, if you lose early in the year, you still probably control your own destiny, whereas if you lose late in the year, things get a little bit more murky. I think we're kind of overlooking the idea of how much it can impact winning. Like this, the way that late winning can impact your football team. Like, I look back to last season, and we have never had a situation where momentum is factored into a playoff race in college football because the margins have always been so thin. But, like, I look back to last year, who wanted to see Missouri in a 12-team playoff last year? God bless them. They won 6 of their last 7. Only loss was to Georgia in that stretch. Same thing with Ole Miss. They won 8 of their last 9. After seeing what Jackson Dart did in that game against Penn State, the way that Ole Miss offense ran it up, like, nobody wanted to see Ole Miss in the 12-team playoff. Nobody wanted to see Brady let him cook in the 12-team playoff in Missouri because of how hot they were. So, yes, the losses and the value of those is kind of going to slide and be situational. And in real time, early in the year, probably won't mean as much as it does right now in the previous era of college football. But in terms of getting hot momentum and late wins, like, I think you can probably put a higher value on that when it comes to this new era of college football. So, does losing still matter in college football? Yes. Internally, nothing's changed. For Carson Beck, for Jalen Milroe, for Quinn Ewers, for Garrett Nussmeier in Baton Rouge, for Cade Clip, like losing is still not an option for those individuals. And again, when it comes to early losses, you still probably control your own destiny, whereas previously that wasn't the case. Previously, it was like, all right, we'll see what happens. You feel more confident about your ability to control your own destiny if you lose early. But if you win late, too, I think that needs to be a little bit more factored in to how we assess these teams as they make runs in the college football playoff and have a chance to impact their postseason aspirations. So what if losing doesn't matter as much as it used to? A fair question. And for us as fans, it probably doesn't have the same lens we need to view it through. But I still think it matters, and I still think that, again, as long as us sickos, diehards that consume college football content in June are all about this sport, we're going to be okay. We're going to lock arms. We're going to take one step forward, and one step is enough for the day, all right? So one step forward, and when we get there, we'll get there to the college football season, and we'll keep on walking together week by week. So losing still matters. Doesn't matter as much as it used to. We'll see. Some of that, too, is like the interesting part about these discussions. It's all hypothetical. It's all hypothetical. Like, we think we know how this is going to look. Everyone thought they knew how the 14 playoff would look. And then we got to the actual season. As Andy Staples says, we need to retrain our brains. And for some of us, we learn by seeing. We're optical learners. I think I might be that way, to be real with y'all. Hey, appreciate everybody tuned in live. If you could hit that thumbs up button under the picture, that'd be tremendous. We would thank you very much for that. Also, quick plug, I don't think I said this earlier. We're also on podcast. So if you watch live on YouTube like you are right now, gosh dang it, we love you so much. Love you so much. But if you want to listen via audio, you want to listen at your job, you want to listen while you're whipping the FedEx truck, shouts to y'all. You can tune in on podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get them. Type in the Hard Count with J.D. Pickell, and you can find us there. All right, so we got a couple of what-ifs from y'all as it pertains to the Buckeyes of Ohio State. Stallions burner, which I will give you about, a few seconds to guess what allegiance that fan has, says, what if Ryan Day loses to Michigan again? That'd be the fourth in a row. Now, this is obviously the worst-case scenario, and we'll kind of unpack this in two different facets. We'll go worst-case scenario and then best-case scenario as it pertains to Ohio State. And this would be a worst-case kind of vibe in multiple ways because, again, fourth in a row to your rival. Doesn't matter if you're the Pop Warner team down the road. Doesn't matter if you're Ohio State. That's not a good thing. And especially in a place like Columbus, Ohio, that is unacceptable. You can go 11-1, but if that one is to Michigan, we're not cool with it. Actually, we're probably not cool with 11-1 to begin with, but that's just what you walk into when you are the head coach at Ohio State. To make matters worse, on paper, you're up. Like, you're the big dog in the conference. You're the big dog. You went and got Caleb Downs, who is the best player, arguably, defensively in college football. Without argument, the best player via the transfer portal. You got him. Went out and got a proven commodity at running back in Quinshon Judkins. 1,000-yard back in the SEC. You pair him with Travion Henderson. You bring back everyone and your mama on defense from last year's unit that was top 5 in the country, more or less. You went out and got better at quarterback. You could have kept your starter from last year's squad that went 11-1. You could have kept him. Instead, you say, you know what? We got to get better. We go out and get Will Howard, another proven commodity in college football from Kansas State. Had a lot of folks that wanted his services. I'm just going to say, he was not short of options when it came to the transfer portal, was Will Howard. So you have the fact that Ohio State is up on paper, but then on paper, on the other side of things, going back to this what if around Michigan, Michigan is down on paper. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily all the way true as we walk this thing out and actually have the games played, but if you were just taking it from a returning production standpoint, the team that won the national championship last year, a lot of those guys aren't there anymore. New head coach, first-time head coach, to be clear, not counting the games where he kind of celeb shot for Jim Harbaugh. New quarterback, who knows who that's going to be. It's not going to be J.J. McCarthy. I know that much. He's making a whole lot of money in the NFL right now. They're 128th in returning production, is Michigan, out of 134 teams. So at the very least, you have more experience. You, on paper, should have more talent. This should be the year you get it done. So if you don't get it done, it's like, all right. Hey, like what else do we need to do if we're Ohio State? What else are we supposed to do here if we can't beat Michigan with arguably the best roster in college football and our coach, who is matched up against a first-time head coach, first-year head coach, what are we doing here? And so I've said this many times, but I feel like we got to revisit this. You would be outside of your mind box if you think that firing Ryan Day is the right answer here. A couple of reasons for that. He is 56-8 as a head coach. He has won north of 87% of his games. 87%. That is unheard of. That is ridiculous. Now, the reality is you can't lose 3 to Michigan. And 8 of his losses, 3 of those to the wrong team. But it's worth noting now that Ryan Day has not just trotted out the same kind of team every single year when it comes to what he's done at Ohio State. Like, he has adapted and shifted his philosophy and shifted his roster. He's passing off play calling this year to Chip Kelly. Like, he is working to make this a better product. And this is not a situation where I want to pass out strays to other staffs, but like USC, it took a couple of seasons in wasting a Heisman Trophy winner, more or less. I hate to say wasting, but not maximizing a Heisman Trophy winner to make a switch on your defensive staff. Ryan Day, it took like one game. Like, the Oregon game doesn't go the way that he wants it to. He says, boom, we're switching things midseason. We got to roll here. That offseason, they go out and hire Jim Knowles. So give him credit for how he's adapted. And it's worth noting now, too, I think he's not done adapting. Like, this is his first job as a head coach. There was no, hey, figure it out at a G5 school. Hey, figure it out at an FCS school. Hey, maybe a lower-level power conference school. Be a head coach and then maybe get that big job at Ohio State. It was like, Urban Meyer, pass the sticks to Ryan Day. You're the head coach now. Bright lights, big city, let's roll. Like, that was, I think, the impossible situation he got thrown into in some ways. Yes, you have a great roster, but to have the expectations as high as they are and to be a first-time head coach, like, that is difficult to walk into. It's very, very difficult. So what I'm trying to say here is Ryan Day, as a head coach, the way he's continued to evolve and his rosters continue to evolve, we'd be foolish to think that he's a finished product as a head coach. So going back to my point here, you lose to Michigan a 4th time, worst case scenario in a lot of ways, but if you fire Ryan Day, you are outside of your gourd. It's worth noting now, Ryan Day and Ohio State, let's say they go 11-1, this what if becomes a reality, lose to Michigan, they're still in the playoff. They're still in the, I don't know if they're winning the Big Ten with that kind of situation because of how difficult the Big Ten has been in the last couple of seasons, but let's just say they, for whatever reason, don't make the Big Ten championship, but they make the playoff. They go on a run, they win the national championship. There's still some unhappiness around Michigan in that game, but I think there would be a lot of folks in Columbus that are like, all right, we hate one part of this, but that national title trophy does look pretty good in Columbus. So that's one reality now. I don't think you need to totally just write the end of the story here if they lose to Michigan for the 4th year in a row. But here's my question. As much as people talk about Ohio State and firing Ryan Day if it happens with Michigan, again, we think that's crazy. Andy Staples brought up a really good point when we had a conversation, I guess it was last Thursday, around Ohio State and the urgency to win this season. At what point is this a mutual breakup? Like, at what point, if you're Ryan Day, I understand Ohio State is the best job in a lot of ways, can be one of the best jobs in college football from a brand level, now from a resource level with what they're doing with NIL. At what point, if you're Ryan Day, do you just say, you know what? I win 87% of my games. I go 11-1, and I'm still like not doing the job that y'all want me to do here. I'm still not measuring up. I'm still getting heckled and having all this social media bullets aimed my way. Like, at what point are we just like, you know what? I'm a really good head coach. I know that. I've proven that. I'm going to go win somewhere else. I'm not calling my shot here, but Andy Staples, I think, had a really good point in saying, like, at what point is there just hey, this isn't good for anybody. Nobody's getting fired here, but we're just like, we're going to part ways mutually. It's not you, it's me kind of thing. I wonder how far off we'd be if that situation were to arise. So that's kind of the doom and gloom. If you're an Ohio State fan, you sat tight there for the better part of the last few minutes. That is then the quote-unquote worst-case scenario, in my mind. If they have an early exit from the college football playoff, and if they lose to Michigan, like, yeah, things get uncomfortable quick. But Bobby brings the juice with his what if, and he says, well, what if Will Howard is the missing piece? Hey now, Will Howard's the missing piece for you in Columbus. That tune changes very quickly around Ryan Day, which we'll talk about here a little bit. But the reality is for Ohio State fans, and Michigan fans won't want to hear this, and I don't blame y'all because y'all won that game fair and square. And I mean, I've been very vocal about how I feel about Michigan from what they did last year. They earned every single piece of that national championship. But Ohio State was like A- quarterback play away from beating Michigan and from being a college football playoff team. What happens after that, who knows? But Kyle McCord, he wasn't bad last year. He was 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. I believe he had a top 20 quarterback rating, over 3,000 yards. Like, that's good at a lot of places. It was the timing of the games where he wasn't great. The Michigan game is a perfect example. 18 for 30, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, one of those being on the final drive where Ohio State has a chance to go finish the deal against Michigan. They don't get it done. It's the timing of things. If you get A- quarterback play in that game against Michigan, that timing is correct. It's a totally different script around Ryan Day in this Michigan game. So going back to this what if Will Howard is the missing piece, at face value, it means that Ohio State probably is winning the Big Ten, and they're probably playing for, if not winning a national championship. But the reason why that would be the case is because it would mean that he has a skill set that is able to maximize the rest of the roster. Because Will Howard, he's got a lot of shade being thrown his way. There's a lot of disrespect on his name right now. But, like, if they go out and he is dubbed the missing piece, it means he was a good enough passer to unlock that top wide receiver in America. It means he was a weapon with his legs on the ground and changed the way that you scheme up third and short, changed the way that you have to defend that two-headed monster in the backfield with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. It means that he was able to elevate this roster to their potential. And I think the verbiage there is important, the missing piece. Because missing piece implies that that's the only piece that needs to be added into this equation to make it all go. So that means the defense also played to their standard they had a season ago. It means this receiver room plays to their standard. And it also means that Ohio State, Ohio State is playing complementary football if that ends up being the case. Because last year, like, let's call a spade a spade. I'm very much a Kyle McCord stan in terms of what I hope he does at Syracuse. I hope he lights the ACC on fire. But listen, Ohio State, it was a defensive-led operation last year. It was. Even in the games they won, Notre Dame. Kyle McCord made some throws now to win that football game, but like the defense is essentially what kept him in it. The game against Penn State, we were there in person, saw the second half or the fourth quarter rather of that game on the sideline. The defense shut it down. Now, Penn State had their own issues offensively, but the defense gave the offense enough time to get it going, to dial it up to Marvin Harrison Jr., and that was how they ended up winning that day. So complementary football would be played to make a deep run in the playoff where you're able to beat teams in shootouts, you're able to beat teams in rock fights, you're able to maximize all that you have on that defense because of your offense, and then your offense is able to separate because of your defense. That's kind of the bottom line here if you're an Ohio State fan. It also needs to be said now, if Kyle McCord if Will Howard, rather, comes in and is the missing piece, Kyle McCord, being more or less, from what I understand, told by Ryan Day, hey, we can't guarantee you your job back next year. How smart does Ryan Day look for moving off Kyle McCord in that situation? Not because of Kyle McCord, but more so because of what Will Howard brings to the table. Because there is, I think, a lot of reason that can be made about why Kyle McCord should have stayed at Ohio State, or why Ryan Day says, hey, maybe we do keep the guy who knows our offense, knows the system, knows the locker room, waited his turn. It was 1 year, maybe he gets better the next year. Like there was none of that from what I understand by nature of Kyle McCord now being at Syracuse. So Ryan Day should be applauded for being willing to make the hard move of moving off his quarterback and then bringing in a guy like a Will Howard. And here's the thing I want us to really hone in on here as we kind of wrap up this part of this segment. If Ryan Day ends up leading Ohio State to a Big Ten championship, a win over Michigan, playing for a national championship, in large part, obviously, because of him bringing in Will Howard and what he did via the portal, bringing in some other guys. Make sure we keep that same energy around Ryan Day. Make sure we understand as much blame as he is getting around Ohio State's shortcomings, and a lot of people want to forget that maybe they were just a field goal away. a few feet away as the clock struck midnight on 2022, moving to 2023. They could have been national champions if that kick goes differently. But since then, he has just taken bullet after bullet for Ohio State. He's been the problem. He's been the issue. He's had, a million things thrown his way about what he hasn't done at Ohio State. I'm not telling you some of that isn't deserved. Some of it you earned. Some of it I think is a little bit overkill. But if they go out and accomplish what I'm telling you they could accomplish this season, make sure he gets as much credit as he was getting blame. Because to stand in the eye of the storm there and to go retool the roster, to come back for seconds, in this case, I guess it would be fourths or thirds, whatever you want to call it, give Ryan Day his flowers. Because that's a tough freaking job to stand in there in the biggest brand, arguably, in college football when things aren't going well and people are talking about what you haven't done since taking over that team from Urban Meyer. The willingness to adapt and the vigilance to keep it pushing and to not get overwhelmed and to keep a steady hand. If they accomplish what they can accomplish in 2024, make sure Ryan Day gets some credit. So there's worst-case scenarios and there's best-case scenarios, but as we say a lot on this show, man, the beautiful thing about college football, the field, that 100-yard situation we got on Saturdays, 53.3 in width, always tells the truth. That'll tell us the truth this upcoming season around Ohio State. Another big what-if we got from one of y'all is, what if Jalen Milroe is a perfect fit in Kalen DeBoer's offense? And this is one that we saw in the mentions, and we just started rubbing our hands together. So, oh boy, let's get after it. Because we have – I'll kind of reset this whole conversation. When Kalen DeBoer got hired at Alabama, my first thought was, oh boy, okay. Well, you do know Jalen Milroe is your quarterback, right? And I love me some Jalen Milroe, but stylistically, those two things shouldn't really go together. Michael Penix Jr., Jalen Milroe, both great quarterbacks, both very different quarterbacks in their style of play. And so I started out being a little bit skeptical about Kalen DeBoer and how that would fit together offensively with Jalen Milroe. But as we've gotten further and further into this offseason, I've been able to kind of do a little bit more digging and kind of see the light. Went to Tuscaloosa, I've talked myself into the take that I believe Jalen Milroe is going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate, Heisman Trophy finalist when it comes to where things stand when that award is given out. So the concern for a lot of people around this situation is one that I echoed at the beginning. Kalen DeBoer, pass-friendly offense. Previous stops have been averaging right around 40 attempts a game. Jalen Milroe, not really his bag, okay? Not a bad passer, but the big thing is he hasn't been a consistent passer. Well, the good news is Jalen Milroe's issue, quote-unquote, inconsistency, I think can be met by one of Kalen DeBoer's strengths in terms of how they scheme up the offense and create consistent opportunities for Jalen Milroe to throw the football to. What I mean by that is, to put it simply, he gets dudes open, does Kalen DeBoer, with his scheme. Whether it's shifts, whether it's motions, back the tape and watch what they did at Washington. Yes, they had some dudes to throw the football to. Do not hear me incorrectly. They had guys that are going to make a lot of money here in the NFL in a very short period of time. But a lot of those cats were schemed open by Kalen DeBoer's system. Yes, Ryan Grubb was the OC. It's Kalen DeBoer's offense. It's going to be Kalen DeBoer's offense at Alabama. And so when you create guys open, when you scheme guys open, if you're Kalen DeBoer, that creates a higher percentage of potential for Jalen Milroe to deliver the football, right? So when you have a higher percentage of throws that you can hit, what does that mean for Jalen Milroe? It means he's able to get in a rhythm. How many times, realistically, did we see Jalen Milroe in rhythm last year? The LSU game, maybe. I was at the Georgia game. He made some great throws. Was he consistently in rhythm? I don't know if I would say that. He looked great. I'm not taking anything away from him. He went out and balled the heck out and allowed them to win that football game. Were they in rhythm, though? I don't know. And to me, Jalen Milroe being in rhythm consistently creates more confidence. And you give me a confident Jalen Milroe throwing the football, playing and play out, where he's consistent, that is going to be dangerous. That's going to be dangerous. So the main point I'm trying to make here is, whatever reservations you have about Jalen Milroe as a passer, I understand. But I think Kalen DeBoer is exactly what the doctor ordered to improve his consistency as a passer. It also should be noted, as much as people are running with the narrative of what he is or isn't as a thrower of the football, look at the numbers. He wasn't bad. Top 15 QBR, 23 touchdowns with 6 interceptions. throwing the football, not even counting what he did on the ground. This offense is going to accentuate, it's worth noting as well, what Jalen Milroe does really well throwing the football, which is the deep ball. Like, people talk about Jalen Milroe, they don't have any issues with what he does bombing it deep. I mean, PFF has him as the top-graded deep ball thrower on 20-plus yard throws of returning quarterbacks in college football. Michael Penix Jr., his average depth of target last year at Washington was 11 yards. Translation, they're going to push the ball deep. Jalen Milroe pushes the ball deep well already. He's going to be a better passer. I'm just telling you right now. And so as much as we talk about, Jalen Milroe never having a coordinator like Kalen DeBoer or playing an offensive scheme like Kalen DeBoer, keep in mind now, too, Kalen DeBoer has never had a weapon at quarterback like Jalen Milroe. Do not hear me incorrectly. And I think there was also this thought of and again, I had this hand up. I had this exact same thought early on. Hey, how's it going to fit? How's it going to look? Do they work well together? I don't know, because he's a different player than Michael Penix Jr. Here's the deal. Chefs in Italy, they do pizza. All right, producers in Hollywood, directors in Hollywood, they do movies. Kalen DeBoer, he does offense. That is his calling card. That is who he is. That is what he does. And so you're telling me we're going to give him extra ingredients that, sure, maybe he's less familiar with. He's still going to cook. Like, Kalen DeBoer doesn't get this massively talented piece at quarterback that is Jalen Milroe and say, man, I don't know what to do with this. How do I make this work? No. He sees opportunity. He sees scheme. He sees fit. He sees ways to utilize him. And the way that they are going to, I think, put defenses in a bind with what he does running the football, it's going to be poetry in motion. I'll just say it right. It's going to be poetry in motion. It's going to be magic, okay? Because the way that they spread the defense out, again, whether it be alignment, whether it be shifts, it is going to put the defense in a bind in the sense that they will have to cover the entire width of the field. So you will have more individual players on defense having to account for more space than they are typically asked to account for. So what that means is, yes, throwing the football, it'll help Jalen Milroe. When it comes to him running the football, you're going to be met a lot more often with Jalen Milroe one-on-one in space, which I'm just telling you right now, that favors Jalen Milroe every single time. Also, the angle you have to take on Jalen Milroe is going to be a difficult one, consistently. And he's going to make you pay for that. So the impact of this, to answer the what if Jalen Milroe is a perfect fit in Kalen DeBoer's offense, in short, the defense will get a chance to kind of gel. Because you open with Western Kentucky, you got USF, you're at Wisconsin, a little bit sneaky, you got a bye, and then you got Georgia. And so they're going to score more than enough, I believe, in those first three. Again, Wisconsin's going to be a tough defense. It'll be on the road, but I think they're cut out for it as we sit here in June. Even with that being the case, you're going to give your defense, I think, a little bit of a chance to get their legs underneath them because they have a lot of new players going to have to step up in a big way, kind of break in a new scheme there. They give them a chance to kind of acclimate, at the very least. Now, the long game here for Alabama, the macro impact is as much as this defense allows is how much the offense will impact Alabama's season. And I hate to go back to USC, but like we saw so frequently, and I'm not assuming that Alabama's defense will be on par with USC, don't hear me incorrectly, but oftentimes the greatest player in college football for the better part of the last 2 years was Caleb Williams. And USC had the issue where they had to score 40 for them to have a chance to win the football game. Now, again, I'm not telling you Alabama is going to allow 35 a game. That's crazy talk. But I am saying USC struggled in the sense of Caleb Williams was always their equalizer. He wasn't their edge. And so for Jalen Milroe, new defensive structure, a lot of new young bucks going to have to play at a big level on a big stage for Alabama. Can you equip Jalen Milroe to be your edge and not just the guy that helps you keep pace game in and game out? There'll be a lot of games where you have to keep pace. But if that Bama defense arrives and they look Bama-ish, I'm not saying they look dominant, they look Bama-ish, I think you see Alabama probably win 10-plus football games in the college football playoff, maybe in the SEC title game. If Jalen Milroe really pops, maybe you're the SEC champs yet again, Kalen DeBoer's first year. And what that would do now, stabilizes optics. That's the dangerous thing about Alabama right now. They have vulnerable optics for the first time in, 15-plus years? Because Nick Saban's not there. Everyone wants to know, well, what's Kalen DeBoer going to be? What's Bama going to be under Kalen DeBoer? Who knows? I don't know. You know, I don't know. Recruits don't know. That's the thing now. If they win at a high level, oh, it's Bama. Oh, I recognize that script day being in the college football playoff bracket. I've seen that pretty much my whole freaking life. Oh, yeah, okay, I'm good with Alabama. I'm not concerned anymore with this new head coach. So we took a lot from a little there, but Jalen Milroe, I think it's going to be straight magic out there at Alabama with him running the show. Calling our shot here as we sit here in June, I think he will be a Heisman Trophy finalist. If the defense can hold up their end of the bargain, Alabama could be dangerous. In this year, of course, but I mean in the future now, the ripple effect for optics on the recruiting trail would be massive. Absolutely massive. Let me know what y'all think about that take, man. We're calling our shot here. It's June. It's shot calling season. We're getting to prediction season. The difference between those is shot calling season is like you're kind of just you're heat checking a little bit, right? Like you're calling your shot. You're shooting from a pretty good distance away because the season's a little bit further away. Predictions are, okay, we're kind of at the doorstep of the season. Maybe it's late July. Maybe it's early August. We're making our prediction. We're shot calling right now. Now, we're not backing off our shot that we called. I mean, our shot will bleed into prediction season when it comes to Jalen Milroe. But I just wanted to hear y'all's opinion on that. Be curious to hear. And maybe we'll do a segment, too, on the shots y'all are calling when it comes to this upcoming season as well. So shot calling season in full effect. I suppose Jalen Milroe as a Heisman Trophy finalist would be the first shot that we're calling. Now, Texas fans, y'all have been good to us, man. We're glad to have y'all here. What is a win total that you would be happy with in 2024? Vegas says, hey, over under 10.5 wins for the Longhorns? Would you be happy with that? Would you be happy with less than that? What do you think? We'll talk about it right now. But again, Texas fans, y'all been great to us. If you're watching in a one-off clip capacity, make sure you subscribe to this channel. If you're watching in a live capacity, subscribe to this channel as well, because we do a live show now. If you're watching, I'm speaking to the folks now that are watching this 8 to 10 minute YouTube clip. We do a live show 3 times a week, 11 a.m. Eastern, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's college football, nothing but college football. No shade to any other sport, but we love the sport with every fiber of our being, so we are fortunate to do it for a job. Talking about it, that is. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, being a college football sicko and a college football junkie, subscribe to the channel and welcome home. As I was saying, Vegas has got Texas pegged at over under 10.5 wins. So that's Vegas saying, listen, we know your first year in the SEC. We get that. We hear all the talk around how you're going to have to acclimate to the SEC, but this is Vegas speaking now. Hey, we think you're still really good. We think you're still really good. Come on in here. We'll give you this over under 10.5 pass. And there's been this discussion around Texas, I mean, since I gained consciousness of, is Texas back? Is Texas not back? And we have long held the opinion on this show, that was always for clicks. That was always for someone to put on a thumbnail and to help their click-through rate and to do better numbers. It was always overblown because whether you said they were back or not back, you would get tremendous pushback. It'd create conversation, whatever. What I will say is talk about back or not back. The Steve Sarkisian era at Texas has arrived. They are no longer ramping up for something. They are no longer building to compete at a high level. They've already done that. They made the college football playoff. They won the Big 12 conference. They have a roster, even coming off of last year's season where they lost a couple of All-Americans, most notably on the defensive line, still have a roster that is top tier. You brought back your quarterback from last year who I think has a chance to be one of the best, if not the best quarterback in college football this season. The big piece of this, the culture, is also set to match. Like, you know this now. Your outfit, you can have a nice shirt. You can be looking good. Doesn't matter where you're going. Maybe you're going to a wedding. Maybe you're going out to dinner. Maybe you got a little date planned. But if you don't have a pair of pants to match the nice shirt, brother, you're in trouble. Texas now has a culture to match the roster. So they're looking good. Take a look at the schedule here. The schedule got a little kick to it, all right? It's not the worst draw in the world when it comes to the SEC, but it's got a little spice to it. You got a game at Michigan week 2 with Big Noon, Joel Klatt, and Gus Johnson. That'll be a fun one. I mean, so there's your little non-conference entree, if you will. You got Oklahoma in Red River. Here's the big thing I want us to look at. You go from Oklahoma in a neutral site game, probably a pretty emotionally draining game, no bye week, back at the crib, you're hosting the Georgia Bulldogs, who will be one of the best teams in all of college football. Florida could be sneaky, Kentucky could be sneaky, then you finish at A&M. So you didn't have the most difficult schedule in the world in terms of rosters you're matched up against, but still enough to solve your problems if you were looking for a little bit of difficulty on the schedule for Texas in 2024. My questions around the Longhorns are twofold. The first is probably the one that everyone has. Can Quinn Ewers stay healthy? Tell you what, dude, that guy has an arm that was touched by God. Like, he just spilled a little bit of extra arm strength and accuracy and just it factor onto Quinn Ewers when he made him. However, Quinn Ewers has not been able to play a full season just yet at Texas. And that's saying something with how good they were last year and their ability to still make the college football playoff, which is, I think, again, going back to the culture, says a lot about it. So you hope and pray for Quinn Ewers and his health this year if you're a Texas fan, because that's massive and that's going to mean a lot for you if it comes to being able to surpass that 10.5 preseason win total. So if you bet the over there, pray for Quinn Ewers, is what I want to say. The other question is, how much as a Texas defense do you feel the loss of your two All-American defensive linemen, Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy? They've gone to the NFL. They're millionaires. God bless them. But last year, Texas, their calling card, as much as it was the offense, it was also their run-stopping defense. Like, that was what I felt watching them in person against Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Like, they were less than 3 yards a carry allowed on the year, top 5 in America. Not in the Big 12, not if you put them in the SEC, top 5 in all of college football. That is an edge, that is physicality, that is saying something about Texas. Now, it's worth noting, the folks in Austin, as much as you hate to lose two All-Americans on the defensive line, they still feel real good about what they got in-house. They feel really good about Alfred Collins stepping up for them this upcoming season. They feel really good about the second and third level of that defense as well. Anthony Hill, going to be a dude for you this upcoming season in Austin, as he was last year at linebacker. You got Andrew Makuba, transfer safety from Clemson, comes to Austin with a lot of accolades. They feel like that second and third level of the defense is actually a touch better than it was last year. And so the thought is that should be able to compensate a little bit for what you maybe don't have as much of losing two All-Americans on the offensive line. And to be fair now, just because you lost two All-Americans doesn't mean that your defense is going to be bad. It just means you lost two All-Americans. So still going to have, I think, solid defense. But how much do you feel the loss of that from a run-stopping perspective in the SEC? Because it's a line of scrimmage league. It is. It's a big person's game. It's a big person's conference. So my first thought when it comes to win total around Texas, I was doing this segment. I'm over there in a dark room listening to flow state kind of music, trying to just think about this segment and give us a good gauge for what we think Texas needs to have in 2024. And my first thought was, okay, 10-2, if I'm a Texas fan, I could probably stomach. Does it feel good? No, but like first year in the SEC, that Oklahoma right into Georgia is kind of a tricky draw. You're at A&M, which like who knows what happens in that game. Florida and Kentucky, I've already said, I think they're sneaky. But the more I sat with it, the more I was just like, man, if they go 10-2, that means they probably underachieved in some games they weren't supposed to underachieve in. Because from a roster level, I think the only team that is as good as Texas, if not, going to present a pretty good challenge, is Georgia. And Texas fans know that. But like on paper, at Michigan, as good as Michigan I think is going to be in 2024, they're still finding their sea legs in week 2. Like Michigan in week 2 may be a different team than what they are in week 10. And so the fact that you get them early in the year, I think that helps Texas. I think Texas should have a superior, more experienced roster. At the very least, they'll have a more experienced quarterback and a more experienced head coach, even with it being on the road. So the more I sat with it, I was like, man, 10-2, I don't know if I am happy if I'm a Texas fan. Because of those games, it would mean we underachieved. And still, we made the college football playoff. That's great. It's a good first showing in the SEC. But, like, to me, if I'm a Texas fan, I think 11-1 is probably what feels about right. And it's funny because, again, this reputation around Texas fans for the better part of the last few years was that's an entitled fan base. They think they should just roll the ball out there and be the better team every single week. And again, I don't think that's really how Texas fans felt, but nationally there was this perception around the brand and what they were in Austin and the culture and all that. Now it's funny because in reality, I think you should feel like you should roll the ball out there and play and win in most games. Like you have the roster, you have the coach, you have the quarterback, you got the culture to match. Every game outside of Georgia, Texas, I believe, preseason, if you were to pull a win or a spread for every single game, should be favored. Even at Michigan, with all that they lost, you should be favored. And so with that being the case, I think 11-1 feels about right. Now, where does that put you in the SEC title race? Who knows? But you're in the playoff. You hope and pray that Quinn Ewers is healthy. If he's not, the Arch Manning era starts real early. But again, you hope he's healthy. If they do that, if they go 11-1, I think it really legitimizes what 2023 was for Texas. I think it legitimizes what Sark has built to. And people aren't able to say then, oh, well, it was just because everything came together for the right year. Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell got through the portal. They kind of caught magic in a bottle for 1 year, and then Texas regresses when you put them in a real conference, is what people would say. But if they go out and go 11-1, it's like, all right, Sark's for real. He's not just a good coach. He's not just a quarterback guru. He is a builder of rosters and of cultures. Texas is going to be a problem in the SEC. Texas is going to be a problem in college football as long as he's the head coach. So 10-2, could you stomach it? Maybe, but I think you're actually content and maybe happy even with 11-1 out there in Austin. Not calling my shot, not predicting you can't go undefeated. I'm just saying with what you'd be content with 11-1 feels like a fair number to put to it. Alrighty. So I want to get to the live chat here in just a matter of moments. Hey, blow that thing up, will you? I mean, just get after it in there. We got Nick Brake running the show. He can handle it. I'm telling you what. I mean, that's broad shoulders. You can get after it in the live chat and throw us some questions, and Nick Brake will be more than apt to be able to handle it while he punches this thing live, because dude's a dog, all right? Dude's a dog. But before we get to that, one more segment I want to get to here. I've already told y'all during this live show, but I'll say it again. We are going to have a segment dedicated during the college football season, during the week, to owning our misses. Hey, hand up, we were wrong. Like yesterday, hand up, I read a stat that was incorrect about the number of players drafted from the Southeastern Conference. Now, my point was still intact in the sense that the SEC has dominated the NFL draft, neither here nor there. What are some teams that we were maybe just a year too early on when it comes to what they did last season? Maybe this is a team that is going to pop in 2024. We thought they'd pop in 2023. Full disclaimer, this is not a prediction that they win their conference. This is a prediction that they will be a more full version of what we expected them to be a season ago. First team on the docket, man, Wisconsin. Dude, death taxes and Luke Fickell winning ball games. Take that to the bank, man. Luke Fickell has won 70% of his football games. 70%. That's ridiculous. He took Cincinnati to the college football playoff. Wasn't an accident, wasn't a fluke. He's a really good ball coach. Going in now to year 2 at Wisconsin, they are top 20 in returning production in all of college football. The key metric here for me, they bring back 71% of the production on defense that allowed 20 points a game last year. Good luck. Jump around is going to be blasting out there in Madison. Now, last year, I told y'all a lot about Tanner Mordecai. I thought it would be just chef's kiss, a perfect fit with him and Phil Longo in the air raid offense. However, Tanner Mordecai gets dinged up a little bit, tries to battle through. You bring in Tyler Van Dyke. Now, Tyler Van Dyke has experience at a power conference level in college football. Coming from Miami, it wasn't a fit. Had a great first year out there in Coral Gables. Really struggled the better part of his career out there at Miami. I think a change of scenery. I think getting back into a more air raid offense kind of approach is going to be massive for him, because when he tore it up, it was with Rhett Lashley. When Rhett Lashley, the air raid coordinator, who's now the head coach at SMU, was his coordinator at Miami when he had all that success. So now you get into an offense you're more comfortable with, kind of get settled in. No Ohio State, no Michigan. You get Oregon and Penn State both at the crib. I'm just saying, keep an eye on Wisconsin, keep tabs. I don't know that they'll win the Big Ten. I would for darn sure not count them out to spoil somebody's chances at winning that conference. Kentucky, year too early team. Last year, I really liked Devin Leary. I think that Brock Vandagriff could be a more similar version to what we thought Devin Leary would be. This is a strictly BVG, again, Brock Vandagriff, and Mark Stoops kind of play for me. They still got dudes to throw to now, too. Barry and Brown, Dane Key, two of the best wide receivers in college football that nobody seems to really be talking about. They will be scrappy. They will be tough. And also, it's worth noting here, we try to be a little bit hesitant when it comes to predicting patterns in college football, but, seems like now every third season, Coach Stoops, they pop for a 10-win kind of year. All right, so I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but it feels like they're due for one. Kentucky, we were a little bit of a false start. The show's called The Hard Count, okay? So there's a reason why we jump off sides now and then. We jumped off sides on Kentucky. I like them to be real good here in 2024. NC State, similar scenario of what I said about Kentucky and Devin Leary with Brock Vandagriff is the same thing about Grayson McCall and what Brennan Armstrong wasn't last year. I think if Grayson McCall is a more similar version to what Robert and I expected Brennan Armstrong to be for NC State, transferring in from Coastal Carolina, it could be magic. Because Dave Doeren now, it doesn't matter how much returning production they have or what coordinators are back or not back. NC State is a cockroach kind of football team, meaning year in and year out, regardless of what face is on the programs out there, they are going to be scrappy, they're going to be tough, they're going to be physical. That's just in their DNA. They are going to be tough to kill like a cockroach. Look at the schedule, man. The ACC is already wide open. Their game is, their toughest game rather, is at Clemson. No Miami on the schedule, no Florida State on the schedule, no Louisville on the schedule. Holla, NC State could be a team in the ACC. Keep tabs on the pack. Last team I want to talk about here, we were a year too early on them last season, Texas Tech. Now, I'll say this very, very candidly. I would run through a brick wall if Joey McGuire told me that was a good idea. I would. He is one of the best communicators, best motivators I have ever been around. I was a graduate walk-on at Baylor. And Joey McGuire talked to me like I was somebody that mattered, somebody that was important. I had no value to that team. None. Couldn't develop me. I was maybe going to be someone that could run down on special teams for you. But Joey McGuire, so intentional with the way that he communicates, he already has tremendous buy-in from that locker room at Texas Tech. It's going to matter when they play games on Saturdays, as it already has. Also worth noting, the eval process they have out there in Lubbock is a little bit unorthodox. They run it like a professional system where the personnel department will evaluate kids and then the staff will then recruit those kids. It's not the linebacker coach looks at a linebacker he likes and says, I want this guy. Personnel staff does that on the front end. And in that way, Texas Tech has been able to be early on a lot of these top recruits. So the point being here, I think Texas Tech, the way they eval and the way they develop, they have a lot of people, I believe, on that roster that the college football public is not yet familiar with. They're going to get familiar with them this upcoming season in the Big 12. You bring back Taj Brooks, 1,500-yard back from last season. No Kansas State, no Utah. The Big 12 loses Oklahoma and they lose Texas, two of the most talented rosters in that conference. The Big 12 feels wide the heck open. This is the team now. I told you, we're not predicting conference champions, though, but if you're looking for a value bet, there's never too early of a time to start paying for the Christmas presents for the kids. Plus 1,000 for Texas Tech to win the Big 12. I'm just saying. I'd keep tabs on Texas Tech. So teams we were a little bit early on, we liked them last year, and we jumped the gun. Kentucky, Wisconsin, NC State, and Texas Tech, I believe, all set to pop in 2024. Hey, appreciate everybody tuned in live. If you have not yet, just two things really quick. If you could, one, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's it. Totally free. It doesn't spam you with emails. It doesn't charge you anything. It's totally free. Subscribe to the channel because it helps us get a better gauge for the content you want to see. I said it yesterday, we're like a grocery store, all right? So we try and meet your demand with our supply. If you say we want Pop-Tarts, we get you Pop-Tarts. And so that's a roundabout way to say we want to do the content you want to see. So subscribing helps us do that. Second thing, if you could like the video, it boosts the algorithm. It allows more college football sickos and junkies to see this sport and see the show and enjoy this show that this sport revolves around. We'd appreciate that. So it's more of a thing. One helps you with the content. The other helps other people. So count it as the assist for the day, if you will. All right, bringing in the man who's just always dishing out assists, whether it be in life, whether it be on the soccer field, I would suppose, whenever he plays, whether it be in kickball. It's that man, Nick Brake. Nick, what's going on, brother?
What's up, man? I've got 3 questions for us. I'll get to pretty quickly.
I love
Andrew,
it. I love it.
What quarterback or team do you think will benefit the most from in-helmet communication?
Ooh, this is a good one. I'll take 2. Auburn and Peyton Thorne with Hugh Freeze. Play caller savant. I love that. And then DJU and Mike Norvell. New system for him, getting comfortable, having a great play caller, his best play caller he's ever had in his career now, behind the sticks for him, talking to him. I love that for him. It's huge.
Very nice. Very nice. Good question, Andrew. Goat Dog says, JD, you have to realign every conference in college football 25. Describe one of your favorite new conferences.
I have to realign every conference.
I think you just have to make let's say you just have to make 5 power conferences, and then the rest are the G5.
You know what I'm
going back
doing?
to the old days.
You know what I'm doing? I'm resurrecting the West Coast. I'm getting USC, UCLA back in the pack, whatever we're going to call it. Oregon State, Washington State. I'm getting Washington. I'm trying to think of who I would pluck to be in our conference that wouldn't already be in that original West Coast conference or Pac-12 on the West Coast. You heard what I'm saying, a West Coast team.
Kind of run into trouble there.
Yeah, man. I guess they kind of had all the West Coast. You know what? Let's go out and grab Boise. I'll get Boise State as a part of the Pac-12. I don't know what we're going to call it yet. Maybe we'll just call it the Pac.
Mm-hmm.
They call it just JD's Pac. I don't know. The Big Pac. Maybe we get 6 teams, call it the 6-pack. I don't know. But at the end of the day, Boise State is in that deal for me. That'd be a lot of fun. That'd be good for the college football 25 ecosystem.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I would just be like, let's just do what we had. You know,
just run it back.
It made sense in the geographical way.
Could also go a Texas conference. You
know,
A&M,
could.
Texas, Rice, SMU, TCU.
Mm-hmm. North UNT.
Yeah. Shouts to North Texas.
What if you did like the best
Texas
teams from Texas and Florida in the conference?
Whoa. I like that. Yeah, you could just take all of the states that crush at high school recruiting and just put them all in one place.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be dope. I love that. I like where your head's at, Nick. That's a good one.
Called the South Conference.
The South Con. SoCon.
SoCon. Yeah, I've heard that one before.
Yeah, I was going to say, someone should make that. Someone should call that. Someone should make that a conference.
Hey, the Truth. I told him I'd ask a question from the Truth today. What's a better storyline? Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon in the 90s, or Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma in a potential playoff game coming up this season?
So here's the thing. Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma would be box office. Like, I mean, take my money right. Whatever I have in my pockets, take it. Take my cell phone right now if we can get that game. The unfortunate reality is I'm not really that cued into the wrestling world. So that sounds cool. I know who Stone Cold Steve Austin is and who Vince McMahon is. That sounds like a good time, but I'm not in tune with it like that, unfortunately.
What about Ali and Frazier?
Ali and Frazier. Dude, so what do you think? This is kind of a sidebar. What do you think like is our generation's Ali and Frazier? Like McGregor and Mayweather? Is that like the fight of all title fight? I mean, what, De La Hoya and Mayweather? Like what is our Ali and Frazier? Jake Paul, Mike Tyson? Like
I think that, do you remember when Khabib fought McGregor?
Yeah.
That was a great fight. I think that's like the last great fight I've watched.
That was like a real fight too.
Yes.
Like
it was a real fight after the fight.
They had him mic'd up and he's like just talking trash as he just beats the brakes off my man. I'll watch anything Conor McGregor for the record. Like if he's fighting, so entertaining.
He's in a film this year, Roadhouse.
Was that any good? Yeah, I'm sorry. I keep cutting you off, brother. I'm sorry. Was that any good?
It's fine. It's like it didn't need to be made. The original's better. Jake Gyllenhaal plays the character that Swayze played, and that is a severe downgrade, but it was fun. Yeah.
Is McGregor good in that?
Everyone hated him, but I thought he was awesome. He was so funny and stupid.
You'll do nothing.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. Yeah, he's doing stuff like that.
That's good stuff, man. Dude, I didn't realize we have been rolling. That's a long one.
Yeah, it's a long show. I think that it has reached its end.
Any break take for us? Anything you want to let the people know about before we jump off here?
I don't think so, my friend. I don't think so.
Kickball in June, or kickball end of June. Next week?
Next week. Tonight's the kickoff party. Hopefully some
OTAs.
people want to go.
Well,
yeah.
True or false, you're holding out for more money?
I did change teams.
Okay.
My team that I used to play for, the captains moved. They sort of made a team after, but it was mostly people who all worked together. So I was like, you know what? I've got one other friend who's making a team. I'm going to try it out.
I love it.
See if it works.
Let's go, baby. New season. New season, new you. Let's go. I'm fired up. Nick,
See you guys tomorrow.
as you said, same time as well as same place, which is important, 2 variables for us to nail down.
Yeah,
Sound
let's
good?
do it. I'll be here.
You're the man. Nick Brake, making it happen. Kickball season around the corner. Also saw in the comment section from the Truth, Fresno would be a part of the Best Coast Conference. Important to note there when it comes to the California teams. Hey, we're so glad to have y'all a part of this, man. This is a special college football community that y'all have allowed us to cultivate together. Go and get after it on the socials, and we can keep a good thing going when we're off the air here. But genuinely, from us to y'all, thank you for allowing us to do this as a job. To talk college football every day is hilarious to even call that a job, to call that work. But y'all make it happen. Y'all make this thing go. We will see y'all same time tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. As I mentioned, we're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.